Hey, it's Marthea Pitts, the MSW coach, and I don't have any notes tonight. I just want to talk about like a thought that I had today when I heard someone talk about the fact that, well, what they said was, it's your fault that you feel undervalued. And the context they were using it in, they were talking about in business, right? However, when they made the statement, I immediately thought about like how many social workers tell me they feel undervalued in their case management jobs. And it made me like go down this whole rabbit hole of how I used to feel that way in my career before becoming a social worker, and once I officially entered like case management jobs. For those who are new to me, my first case management job, I was working my way through the completion of I had actually started my MSW degree program and was working my way through the completion of that. And I had 2 case management jobs at that time. Those were my only 2 case management jobs ever in life. Before that, for 7 years, I worked in state government and frontline call center jobs, doing a lot of regulatory compliance, reading of policies, laws, statutes, helping people navigate the bureaucratic systems and structures of state government for the respective departments that I worked in. And so it made me go down this rabbit hole of like why I even was set my sights on going back to school, because at that time I only had a high school diploma, and a large part of it was attributed to the fact that I felt undervalued, right? So before we jump into this whole story time type thing of like why I decided to become my own career coaching client, I looked up what does undervalue mean, because I love a good definition. If you've ever been in anything with me, you know that I always tell the story that I've been in rooms with political leaders, people with high-ranking positions, with lots of power and authority, and they're not clear on what we're talking about. So I always like to set the tone with a definition just to make certain that I'm clear and to help others be clear as well, right? Because I know that people will not ask questions to avoid looking like they don't know something, right? So undervalue, when I looked it up, to undervalue something or someone means to underestimate its true worth, importance, or impact. In a work or career context, if someone says they feel undervalued, it usually means their contributions aren't being recognized. They are not being paid fairly for the work they do. They're being overlooked for opportunities. They know they bring more to the table than what's being acknowledged or compensated. So I'm going to repeat those again. And I want you to drop in the comments, if you're watching this replay back or if you're watching it live, I want you to drop in the comments which one applies to you when you say that you feel undervalued. Even if you don't ever have like the explicit words to say, I feel undervalued, maybe you feel the feelings of these different options, right? And I'll talk about how it showed up in my career. So the first is you feel that your contributions aren't being recognized. The second is you're not being paid fairly for the work that you do. 3, you're being overlooked for opportunities. 4, and that can be internal, external opportunities. 4, you bring more to the table than what's being acknowledged or compensated, right? So, what you offer, like in short, what you offer doesn't match how you're being treated, rewarded, or regarded, right? So drop in the comments which one you feel applies. For me, when I was in my frontline call center jobs, mine was a lot of, I knew that I brought more to the table than what was being acknowledged or compensated. So in my frontline call center days, I did that for a little over 7 years. I was being paid little to nothing. Like my first state government job, I was being paid $19,000 some odd dollars. I think the highest I got up to in that system maybe was like low 30s, right? And so That's when I began my journey of going back to school. I first started out getting my Associates of Art degree because my employer, the state of Florida, provided you with tuition waivers. So I strategically took advantage of that. So that's a large part of the reason why I stayed in that system, because it helped fund my education. A lot of it I had to pay out of pocket because I was a non-traditional student, and when I had originally went to school straight out of high school, I flunked out horribly, right? So I strategically took advantage of them paying for the tuition. But a large part of my reason for going back to school is because I felt that I could offer more, right? That I always felt like I knew a lot more than the people above me. I'm not trying to sound cocky or anything, but I just felt like I had more to offer. As far as jobs, I always felt like my skills and talents really weren't being optimized, and that I was really like in a place where I shouldn't be. In addition to that, I wasn't being paid well. So that was like the fuel as to why I went back to school. Once I went back to school, and now I began working on my bachelor's degree, and then I began my master's of social work degree. That's when I started the working in social services as a case manager, as a workforce development career counselor. So in that role is where I realized like I needed to do more for myself when it came to my career, over and beyond just getting a degree, right? Because at that point I was just doing the things that always worked for me. I always knew how to get jobs, even with just a high school diploma. But I knew that I had to do a little bit more the first time I started to hit apply on job applications while working my way through my MSW degree program, and I didn't get an interview, right? I had never experienced that before. Once I got really, really good at getting jobs. And so when I started putting on there that I was actively working on my degree, and I'm thinking this is gonna open doors for me. The people gonna be throwing jobs at me now that I'm working on a master's degree. I got a bachelor's degree under my belt, and that didn't happen. And so that was like a rule. That was like a awakening for me that a degree does not get you jobs, right? A degree prepares you for the workforce, but a degree program doesn't teach you how to effectively navigate the job market and land jobs, right? I had to teach myself that. So in that cubicle, that was one of my first case management job as a workforce development career counselor. I was like, Marthea, you know how to get jobs? At this point, I was working as a workforce development career counselor. I had helped hundreds of people in my city get jobs, which is a very hard thing to do in the most economically segregated city in the nation in that year, which was 2017. I'm like, Marthea, you know how to get jobs. Why are you relying on your degree? Like the fact that you have these degrees. So I made this decision, like I'm going to be my own coaching client, because I still was not feeling like I had really achieved the level of like autonomy in my work, because I always knew that I was different than my colleagues. Like I thought different, like I had huge success because I always studied, and I always trying to be the best of the best. Right, but I never felt like I was really in a position where I could really live up to all of the greatness that I felt on the inside. So that's why I felt undervalued. I felt undervalued because I wasn't really using like all of my skills and my talents. And then too, I wasn't being compensated based on what I knew that you could earn in the job market. Because at that point I was making I was making $37,100 a year, which was exactly $100 like over the threshold from being qualified for the social service program that I was helping to administer, right? And so it was in that role where I felt undervalued, because I knew that I had more to offer. I knew that I could do more. I knew that I had better ideas. I knew that like I had a lot of experience under my belt, just coming from a very heavy regulatory policy compliance background, and I wasn't living up to that. And I wasn't being compensated. So for me, undervalue led to me feeling like this can't be it. So I became my own career coaching client, and it made me think about it today around the fact like me doing that was the best decision ever. And I really wanted to come on and talk to you all about the fact that Again, a degree does not guarantee your ability to secure employment, right? Because we know that once you graduate, yes, you get the degree, but you still have to learn strategies and techniques to know how to effectively identify what types of jobs you want in the job market. And so, like, in my own journey, this is where I created my career clarity framework at this point that has helped hundreds, if not thousands, of social workers get clear around what populations and issues they want their work to impact, how they want their day-to-day work to look, and how to strategically infuse the things that they're passionate about. So in my cubicle, I created that framework because at that point I had been just working jobs to survive. I really wasn't in a place of self-actualization where I'm like, I enjoy the work that I do. No, I really didn't. My first case management job, the workforce development job, I enjoyed. However, I didn't like my day-to-day duties because I knew that I was bigger than that, right? And so even just the way that I'm explaining this may be what you're feeling, because I didn't have the words back then. I just knew that I was destined to do something bigger, bigger than just be in this cubicle all day, right? I didn't use the words undervalued. I just knew that something more was for me to be, for me to do. So I created that career clarity framework. I got really, really clear on like what I wanted my day-to-day work to look like. For me, I am not even though I had it on my career plan, I'm not a person that's like, I want to be in policy, right? Because the truth is, I don't enjoy that type of work on a day-to-day basis. What I do enjoy is I do enjoy educating people, which when I got clarity on that using my framework, it wasn't a surprise to me because I come from a long line of educators. My grandmother is a retired kindergarten teacher. I have tons of aunts, uncles, great aunts and uncles, godparents who are educators. And even though I never thought about entering the education system, because I was like, I don't have time to fool nobody's kids, only because I had my own daughter at an early age. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. I wasn't surprised when I like really sat down and got still and used my guiding questions that I had with my career clarity framework. And I realized like out of all the work that I've done, I really enjoy educating people, right? So for me, I got clarity on the fact that my work will look like education. And then I got clarity around, I always knew who my population was. However, I got crystal clear on like what aspects of the system that I wanted to touch with my work. Because technically, and I always tell my coaching clients this story, that my population is pregnant and parenting youth and young adults. I'm all about ensuring my professional mission, like my big professional mission is I want to ensure that pregnant and parenting youth and young adults are able to successfully achieve lifelong self-sufficiency. Why? Because I have a personal connection to that. I myself was a young adult, pregnant and parenting young adults. I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 19. I had my daughter when I was 20. And I struggled with getting employment as a young parent, right? And so that personal experience, this is how I got really, really good at getting jobs on my own because it was just so hard to do in my city. That personal connection is what really makes me so like I'm always talking about getting jobs and how to strategically like optimize an opportunity in front of you to get you ahead, because I had to always be super like savvy with my career because again I only had a high school diploma for a long time, right? And so when you only have a high school diploma living in the city where I live, you have to get real creative because in that city it was largely based on nepotism, who you knew. And also I didn't have any social capital. I was new to the city. I didn't know anyone. Also all of the jobs I got, I had to get on my own, which was essentially like very hard to do, especially the state government jobs. So out of all of that personal connection, and I share that with you because that's a part of the career clarity framework where your population and issue may be something that you have a personal connection to. There's two other areas, but I'm just going to point that one out for you. It may be something that you personally experience, right? So I got really clear about my population and issue and the fact that I specifically wanted to work in the workforce development system. I got really clear about like how I wanted to strategically infuse my own personal passions into my career so I can increase my career satisfaction rates. Because after years of just working jobs just because I have to, I was like, I'm not going to do that no more. Being that I spent all this time, paid all of this money, invested all of this energy, had all of these different emotions, getting all of these degrees. This time, I'm going to use the degrees to get the job that I really want. Right? So I got really clear on what outside passions I wanted to strategically infuse into my career so I can increase my career satisfaction rates, so I could also have more buy-in and connection to my work. But then as a byproduct of me becoming my own career coaching client and me taking charge of my career, and like, I want to do work that I can really stand behind, and I want to create this change for other people because I don't want other people to experience the thing. I did another thing, and it was really unintentionally. I didn't set out to get a macro job with the distinct goal of I want to make more money. That wasn't even on my radar. But as a byproduct of me sitting down, taking charge of my career and saying, Marthea, you know how to get a job. You don't have to stay in this case management job. You don't have to wait until graduation. You don't have to rely on your title as a social worker. I also did another thing, which is I tripled, if not 4 times my salary with my first macro job. I began to make the most money that I had ever made in my career lifetime. And at that point, I probably had really been in the workforce maybe 10 years, right? And I was finally making the most money I had ever made. And in addition to that, like my benefits, the perks that I got with my job, how I had autonomy and flexibility to do my job. I could do my job from anywhere. I wasn't on call anymore 24/7. I was acknowledged. I was technically a part of like the leadership team, even though I didn't set out for I'm going to get a leadership job, right? I had never had any leadership experience. However, I was an expert on this topic. Right, so I share all of that to say that me feeling undervalued in my career, feeling like it's more for me to do, that it's more for me to have, that I don't have to keep working for these pennies. I can really add value to something over and beyond doing like a ABCD type job. And no offense, because I feel like my call center jobs really made me the professional who I am, because I had to have those jobs to get really good at explaining to people very complicated processes, because it now helps me coach my coaching clients. And so as of today, I've helped well over 180 social workers pivot into macro social work roles, because I'm really good at like breaking down and taking very complex, hard to understand things and making them digestible and explaining them and teaching them to people, right? So my call center frontline jobs really is why a large part of like my professional identity today. I had to have those jobs to get really good. That's why you all can like consume a piece of my content and you'll leave me a comment or send me a DM. You're like, dang, I never thought of it like that way. Or, oh my gosh, Marthea, I never even... It's because it was them call center days where I had to talk to people from the top to the bottom, blue collar workers, all the way up to political leaders, medical doctors, and I had to read laws and policies and statutes all day, right? So I say all that to say that even in those jobs, which I consider to be like A, B, C, D jobs, social service jobs, let's be honest, right? And I may step on some toes with this. Social service jobs don't require like specialized skills and training. They're not. They don't, because they are designed for people in the community where the organization is located. So what that means is they have to be jobs that the social service organization can easily train anyone to do. So I call them ABCD jobs. You do this first. You do this next. You do this next. You do this last. This is what should happen, right? And so this is why a lot of social workers who find me always say that they wish they had more autonomy in their work. And it's because you are not in a job currently, your case management job, that's designed to give you autonomy, right? It's because it's ABCD work. It's a social service job, right? It's not a job where you're required to really critically think. You're not allowed to do it a different way. Like, you have to do it a certain way to produce an outcome. You're very focused in on what you do. It's very structured. It's a lot of micromanagement, a lot of oversight, a lot of like constantly monitoring what you do. It's because they're training anyone to do it, and they have to have checks and balances in place to ensure that the outcomes that are intended for your program are achieved. And so when I shifted to macro level work, it was out of a desire to break out of that, because I know that I am a very self-led person, right? Of course, I can follow the best leader in the room because I'm always learning. I always want to learn more. But also, I've also been in the workforce for a lot of years. I'm not new to the workforce, right? I don't need to be micromanaged on like how to send a letter. I don't need to be micromanaged on, like, especially after I've been in the position for a while, I don't need to be micromanaged on how to make a case note. I don't need to receive feedback and like, which I never did. This is why, like, I always I won multiple awards in my case management job. One of my awards was that I always maintained a less than 1% error rate on my case files, right? Because I'm good. And this is true for many of you all. But I share that to say, like, this is why you feel undervalued. It's because it's your fault. In the words of the person, it's your fault because you accepted something that wasn't in alignment with what you really, really wanted. You, at the end of the day, you settled, or you didn't understand your value in the job market. And so this is why I always talk to my coaching clients around, like, the fact that before we even talk about a resume, before we talk about looking at jobs and applying to jobs, you have to get crystal clear about what you want. I recently had a virtual career planning retreat. It was over the span of 3 days, and there were so many takeaways and aha moments. Actually, I got them right here. I can pull them up real quick. There were so many takeaways and aha moments, right? And so the career planning retreat was all about teaching aspiring and current macro social workers about career planning, right? I always use the analogy because I love a good, I'm looking at my quotes. I love a good analogy. Like, you need a plan when it comes to your career. And the cornerstone of career planning is clarity. Before you can create a plan, you have to get clear, right? And so you need a plan. Just, you don't jump in your car to go to a new location without sitting down first and programming into your phone, into your GPS system, the address, and looking at the alternative routes. And you're like, okay, I don't want to take tolls today. I don't want to take the highways. I want to go over here, right? So you need a plan. Just like in your education, in your pursuit of getting your degree, you all, at the beginning of every semester, you have to meet with your academic advisor. And your academic advisor does what? They pull out the course sequence guide. And on the course sequence guide, they tell you if this is in person or online. They tell you in fall semester, you need to take these 4 classes. In spring semester, in summer semester, you need to take these 4 classes. In spring semester, you need to take these 4 classes, right? And then the following year, you're going to take these, and these, right? So it's a plan. right? The bigger objective is I'm going to complete my MSW degree program. However, you then create what the baby steps, the SMART goal steps of what you're going to do when to get you there. However, for a lot of people, when they're embarking on like anything career related, they don't have a plan. Their plan consists of, I need a job, I'm going to go to a job board, I'm going to apply for the first job that I have, right? And so you're doing it all wrong if you're doing it that way. What happens is you just get to whatever is available, and this is why you feel undervalued. How I always talk about undervalued is you feel misaligned. You feel misaligned because we're working with organizations where you don't buy into what they're doing. You don't buy into how they're doing it. And then what we learned tonight is you don't feel like you're being compensated. You don't feel like you're being acknowledged or rewarded adequately for your contributions. And that's the truth for many of you that follow my content. You all are high achievers just like me. So for high achievers, that means you go over and beyond on everything that you do. You don't do things like how the bare minimum. You don't do things just like how it was taught to you. You go over and beyond. You pride yourself on excellence. You pride yourself on quality work. You pride yourself on your integrity, your loyalty, your things like that. And that's where I was. And this is why you feel undervalued, because you're not getting either the acknowledgement or the pay to compensate that. So when I did the career planning retreat, this is the first time that everyone, all of the attendees, everyone was sitting like deer in headlights, where first time they've ever been engaged in a conversation around clarity and planning, right? Clarity and planning in your career. And so some of the takeaways that people were saying was, the 3-day virtual retreat reassures me that I can be successful in macro level work. It is wonderful to gather with other system mind advocates. I feel clear on next steps I can take now and ongoing to help me get clarity on my passions, purpose, and population to support my career goals, which is my framework. Right. This 3-day virtual retreat was so pivotal in helping me to gain more clarity about my career vision, because we talked about career visioning, and I helped them create a vision for themselves, for their career. The guidance and support has been essential for me to identify that I need to push past imposter syndrome. This is one that I really, really love. The person was like, and I know who left this. She was like, I don't have the time to be an expert about my population and a career expert as well to find a job. Might as well get the information right from the expert, right, rather than weeding through it myself. Right. So those are just some. And there was others around, like the fact that they never thought about their career in that way. They never, one person, she made the discovery through the career clarity process and actually created an action plan for herself around how she's going to strategically infuse her outside passion and past career of being a licensed cosmetologist into her social work profession, because what I've helped her uncover is that she has identified a gap when it comes to services for a certain population when it comes to beauty and personal grooming, right? And so she's identified a whole lane for herself, and the excitement she had, I need to cut that up and release that out publicly, because the excitement that she had around the realization of like, wow, I don't have to abandon the career I really, really love to make money, right? I don't have to continue to work where I'm working as a social worker and continue to feel undervalued, be it pay. Well, for her, she didn't say pay, but being undervalued, right? Be it for pay or be it for the level of work she's doing. You can blend the two and still make top dollar. I realized also today in thinking about in this whole conversation I wanted to have with y'all that I don't talk enough about the salaries that my coaching clients secure in their new macro roles. All of my coaching clients are now making the most money they have ever made in their career. I recently sat down and had a conversation. I recorded a podcast episode with my coaching client, Alec. Alec secured a macro job in his state. He loves it, but he talks about in the podcast episode, and you can click the link in my bio. You can go to my YouTube channel and watch his podcast episode, and it's also on my podcast itself on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Macro Social Work Your Way with Marthea Pitts. But Alex talks about how this is the first job that he's ever made this much money. He talks about in his personal life how things have shifted for him dramatically now that he's making the most money ever in his career lifetime, and how he's able to do things differently personally, how he shows up more confidently in his professional life as a result of feeling valued, because now he's also doing work that really taps into his real strengths and interests, and not just like generic things that fall under the scope of social work. And so I encourage you to go watch that. Another one of my coaching clients, Michelle, because my coaching clients, they bring up salaries, I don't, but maybe I need to start doing that. But Michelle landed a macro job doing community public health research, even though she does not have a public health degree, because she's super passionate about, in her personal life, around educating Black women about reproductive health. And so she had these desires in her career to do that, but she never knew how to make it happen. And so in her free time, what that looked like is that she was running community education workshops and groups for Black women to educate them on how to advocate with doctors about their reproductive health, and how to really stay on top of that and not get swept up in the system, because the system is not kind to Black women in the healthcare system, Black people as a whole, right? And so she was doing it in her personal life. I was like, Michelle, we can blend that into your career. She didn't believe me. I was like, you don't have to continue to do that for free. You don't have to continue to do work-related activities outside of work. You can blend that in your career and make top dollar. And she is enjoying her work. But she talks about in her episode around how she is making $30,000 more a year in her salary, and this is the most money she's ever made in her career lifetime. She talks about her the peace she has in having this job, the level of autonomy she has in her work, the fact that she's being valued as an expert, coming from working as a social worker in a food pantry, right? She was doing work managing a food pantry when she's passionate about public health topics. And for a lot of social workers, that's that whole misalignment that I talk about. You're working with populations or issues in your case management job that don't align with your real true issues that you really are super passionate about, that you eat, sleep, talk about in your free time nonstop. I always tell people how you know you're misaligned is if you spend your outside hours outside of work working on different populations and issues from the population and issue touching your 9 to 5. So again, for Michelle, that looks like before working with me in her free time, working with Black women around reproductive health. However, she was working a 9 to 5, working in a food pantry with seniors. Misaligned, right? And she also talks about, I also like to talk about the things outside of monetary wins for my coaching clients. She also talks about how she has more time with her son because of the freedom she has in her career, and I just love that. And that was the same thing for me when I was focused on, I want to, not feel as undervalued. I want to get more in alignment. I increased my salary tremendously. My life changed tremendously. I went from not being able to pay my rent out of one paycheck. I would have to take chunks of money out of multiple paychecks in a month, like bi-weekly, and put it all together to pay my rent for the month. To with my first macro job, I was able to pay my rent out of one check. I began to be able to save. I never had a savings account up until then. I was able to invest in my retirement. I was able to pay my other bills and still have a whole nother paycheck left over, right? And so all of that was out of the fact that I acknowledge the fact that I know that I'm bigger than where I am, and I need to take charge of what I'm doing, and I'm just going to become my own career coaching client. And so since then, I've taken all of that, all of the trial and error I did over those 2 years in preparation for me to start applying, and I've taken all of that and I packaged it into my career coaching program, and it's helped over 180 social workers. But I wanted to come on and tell you the thing that I heard today during my professional development hour around, if you're feeling undervalued in your job, it's your fault, because you haven't done the prerequisite work to really get clear. You haven't established a plan for yourself. And once you do all of that, then you can demand top dollar and really move into an aligned place in your career. And I know a lot of people ain't gonna want to hear that. It ain't my fault, depending on where you are in this journey. But for a lot of people that follow me, you are in a place where you realize, like, I gotta do something different. What I've been doing ain't working. I need to find another solution. And so this is like the all call to you, to tell you, like, you're headed the right way. You're asking the right questions to yourself. And I want to like wave my flag and say, you have options. And so this is a large part of the reason why at the end of this month of April, for 5 days, I'm going to have a what I call the Micro to Macro Prep Academy. Think of it like a webinar. It's a webinar, but it's over the series of 5 days. And I want to be breaking down each day the things that you need to strategically be doing while you're still in your case management job to effectively prepare yourself to pivot to macro social work, right? So it's like it's drilled down all of the things that I did over 2 years. I taken it and packaged it into an academy to teach you what to do in 5 days, right? Because again, if you just listen to everything that I just broke down or watch the replay back, it was a process. I didn't do all of that in one day. I didn't do all of that in one weekend. There was way more things that I had to strategically do as well, like get really clear around what experience I had that was valuable for the macro jobs that I got. I had to get really experienced about how to leverage that to flip it to get the jobs that I wanted. I had to get really good at identifying any skills gaps that I had for myself. All of that was a process. It wasn't anything that I did overnight. It wasn't anything that I did in 1 week. So I created the Prep Academy to give you like a quick and dirty version of what you need to be strategically be doing now in your case management job, while you're still in your degree program, while you're still working on your casework. The worst thing you could do is wait until you graduate. I keep telling people that, but I can honestly say that's the hard. Somebody asked me the other day, what is the hardest thing that I come up against when coaching people? And I was like, nothing really. But I just thought about it. It is. The hardest thing that I come up against is when it comes to talking to people who are in their degree programs, to get them to understand or unlearn, and it got a hold on a lot of people, the fact that you should not be waiting until graduation to start looking for a job. The whole purpose for many of us, unless you were just born into a great situation where you just are here to be a scholar on this earth. For many of us, we go back to school as a means to an end, right? So that means that you're going to get a degree to get a better job, to increase your earning potentials, or to like have more autonomy in your work and to do higher level work. And so with that, you should also be strategically working on your career plan, working on like, okay, what am I going to do when I exit this degree program? You should not be waiting until you graduate. When you do that, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball. So I can honestly say that's the biggest thing that I come up against, is getting people who are actively in their degree program to understand why it's so important. And people really don't learn it the hard way, until like they graduate, and then they realize like, oh my gosh. And I had to go through the same thing, right? Oh my gosh, a degree doesn't get me a job. No, it doesn't. So you should be working on that while you're going to the program. But the Micro to Macro Prep Academy is designed for current social workers, for people going through their degree program, for aspiring social workers, for current macro social workers, for aspiring macro social workers, because I'm going to be teaching you what you need to be doing now. So even if you feel deep down, I'm not ready to move yet, there's still things you need to be doing to prepare yourself for when that move comes. Because if you're feeling any of the things that I named earlier when it comes to being undervalued, the time will come, right? And so you don't want to be like, oh, the time is here and now I got to do all of this stuff, or end up not being able to move. A lot of social workers just aren't able to move because they don't know the process, which is why I've created the process. I've taken everything that I learned on my own and packaged it in the academy. And so the tickets are only $29. The link is in the bio for you to register. People have been buying their tickets, but it's really going to be an opportunity to get a checklist. I know y'all love checklists, even though I always say it's a process. A checklist of the different things that you need to be simultaneously doing to prepare yourself for the pivot to macro work, because it is a process. It ain't easy, but it's doable when you're clear, when you have a plan of action. And so I processed that, I systemized it, I put it into a process, and I'm going to be sharing that with you all about what you need to be strategically doing now and why. And again, these are all of the things that you do well before you get to the point of looking for the job, applying for the job, interviewing for the job. There's other things that you need to be doing in addition to getting your degree, in addition to doing other things that you may be doing as far as certifications and trainings. I do want to make the disclaimer that you don't need a license to do macro level work. I know people find me out for, at different points during the day. You don't need a license. So I'm not talking about a license to do macro level work, but the Micro to Macro Prep Academy will be my 5-day webinar series. I'm going to be breaking that down for you. I did all the hard work for you. It's going to take all the guesswork out of what you need to do. So the link to purchase that is in the bio. It's only $29. It's only $29. It's a small investment in comparison to like the thousands and thousands of dollars that you spend in tuition, all of the hours that you spend doing coursework, all of the tears, all the emotional pain that you may be feeling because you're in a misaligned place. It's only $29. Don't talk yourself out of it, right? Because the truth is, if I would have sat in that queue, I've been talking a lot. This the whole I ain't have a script thing. Now I'm just talking. I've been talking a lot over the last several weeks with my coaching clients inside of the Micro to Macro Career Accelerator around fear and confidence and how to overcome that. And I've read a lot of books because that was also part of the prep work that I did back in those days. Was I spent a lot of my time trying to understand how to overcome the fear that I felt of being bigger, of being seen. Even again, I never said I want to be the CEO of something. No, but I knew that when I moved out of these tasks where I'm just being told what to do every day, it was going to require me to show up bigger, right? So I spent a lot of time researching how to overcome fear. Does it ever go away? Is it a strategy? Is it something I need to do every day, right? And so in that, one of the things that I've learned, and I still continue to learn, is that action overcomes fear. What that means is that when you take quick action, you don't give fear enough time to talk you out the thing, right? We've all experienced that, where you get a wonderful idea, which is going to require you to step outside of your comfort zone. And instead of you doing the thing right then, you get into planning mode or asking 500 people what they think about the thing. Or you're like, nah, I need to wait a little bit and think on it a little bit. And then by the time you think about it for an hour or two, or even for a day or two, or a year or two, you talked yourself out of it. Because by that time, you let the fear sit in, right? And so I've been talking a lot about that with my coaching clients. And this is how I help them move past the fear and start applying and going on interviews and getting the jobs they want. So I share that with you as well. Action helps you overcome fear. Don't let your fear talk you out of an opportunity. The ticket's only $29. Well, what if you don't? What if you don't buy the ticket for $29? You're going to spend another year in a job where you feel undervalued, misaligned, not doing the work that you know you could do, not earning the money that you know you could earn. If I would have let my fear take over me in that cubicle, I would be still in that cubicle earning $37,100 a year. I've made well over that in the 4 macro jobs that I've had, but I didn't let my fear keep me there. So that's my whole point about that. The link to purchase is in the bio at macroandpay.com. It's only $29. I'll talk to y'all later. Happy macro career planning. Bye.